All right, looks like we're live. Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. Today's session is going to be an audio-only session. In case you're wondering why is it an audio-only session, well, मेरी मर्जी, मुझे आज audio करना था. So today's discussion, the topic of today's discussion is press freedom in India. Now you might think, what is this about? Well, I've actually been following, the guest of my podcast, guest today for a while. I know him. I've met him personally. He's a great guy, and I've been keenly following his work. I like to read up, whenever he writes, wherever he writes. I love reading his work, and I've been trying to understand the state of journalism, not in terms of the quality of journalism, but in terms of the safety of journalists in India. How do journalists feel in or work the playing field in general? We have a very skewed view about journalism in India. When we talk about journalism, it's only about Delhi, but that's not journalism. Journalism is about the field reporter, let's say, all the way down somewhere in Tamil Nadu or somewhere in Northeast, where there are independent journalists or there are beat reporters or field reporters who are doing a lot of work. So they face a lot of difficulties in their day-to-day work, in terms of threats to their life or threats to their livelihood, or different kinds of muzzling of their freedom of expression, etc., etc. So when I met Kunal once a while ago, and we were discussing about this, and then and Kunal was sharing a lot of information with me, and I was like, what, this is amazing, and I think Kunal, we need to talk about this stuff on the podcast. And Kunal was nice enough to agree to come on the podcast. So Kunal, welcome to the Cārvāka podcast.
Thank you so much, Kushal.
Okay, Kunal, in case people don't know about you, so let's start with this. Why don't you tell everybody a bit about yourself and what exactly are you doing right now?
So I've been a journalist for about 15 years now. Started with a publication that most of your listeners perhaps wouldn't like a lot. Started with Tehelka for 5 years as a reporter, then editor, joined DNA. Then I was with the Rajasthan Patrika, launched Catch News. After that, I joined Indian Express. I launched In Youth, their youth portal. And then I was part of the launch team of Vice in India. And after that, I decided to take a break from mainstream and joined CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists, as their India correspondent. So at the moment, I mostly report as well as do some bit of advocacy and training on press freedom issues and journalist safety in this country.
So can you give me and the listeners a little bit of an introduction to CPJ per se?
Sure. So CPJ, Committee to Protect Journalists, we are a non-governmental, independent organizations headquartered in New York. We have representatives in almost all major democracies around the world. And we mostly report firsthand. We do firsthand reporting on press freedom issues, as well as we do some bit of advocacy with government, as well as people who are in authorities. Also, we offer some bit of emergency help and training, like on issues like, for example, physical safety, digital safety. Currently, for example, social media is a huge issue in terms of security aspects. A lot of journalists get trolled, threatened, especially women journalists. So we do a lot of those trainings in terms of helping journalists.
So when it comes to training journalists, so I was going through the brochure that you had sent me. So it was almost like a toolkit out of sorts. So yes. It was, so it's like, you start with things that you do about how to. So let's say I'm a journalist and I come to CPJ. So would CPJ actually take me through like a proper course sort of, or a workshop? Or it is just a one-off thing where some pointers are given, or you guys actually conduct proper workshops for journalism?
So we do. It's a very good question, Kushal. We actually do one-to-one counseling, if I may use that word. First of all, I must say that I am talking to you not as officially in my official designation as CPJ India correspondent, but just to give you an idea, CPJ. So, if, for example, if you have faced any threats, or you've been harassed, or you think that you might face some threat, and you approach CPJ. So CPJ does these one-to-one counseling based on the degree or the level of threat that you're facing, whether that's on physical safety basis or on digital safety or even sometimes psychological safety. So we do have people who specialize in these fields internationally, and they kind of try to get online, or if we have local people who can help, we try to put them in touch, so that we prepare you to do this. During the elections, in fact, I had done a number of these more general workshops around the country. Of course, it's, India is a big country, so it's not possible for me to go to each town and city. So we decided to focus on a few states, particularly in Northeast India, Chhattisgarh, and Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. And we tied up with press clubs, and we've gone and done these workshops around the threats that come on journalists when they cover elections, so physical safety, digital safety, psychological safety. And we had come up with this kind of an entire toolkit. As I don't know which one are you seeing, probably that's the one. And so I went through, and there are a lot of simple things. For example, journalist doesn't understand, for example, if you are a journalist, how much of access do you give to a general public when it comes to your personal information which are posted on social media? Many a times we just kind of put out our photographs, our family photographs, our kids photographs, and little realizing that if we have done a report that, let's say a particular section of the public or political parties don't like, they tend to, go looking for things to discredit you or sometimes harass you. So there are a lot of these situations. So we do give a lot of, so when I did this workshop, I kind of went through a lot of these points about how do you stay safe, what are the precautions that you take. We of course also intervene once if a journalist has already gone through some kind of a trauma. We also try to see how can we minimize it and how can we kind of re-traumatize the journalist. So yeah, so these are some of the things that we do.
All right, awesome. So now that we have kind of understood the background of how CPJ functions, so Kunal, I want to, obviously you shared 3 or 4 links with me. Now let us go by each screen one by one, and I'm going to share the screen for for the benefit of the viewers on YouTube. You may not see me, but you can definitely see the screen. So what I'm going to share with you guys now is basically a data set that Kunal has sent me across. And as you see over here, this we're going to start with this database. To be very accurate, CPJ has a database from 1992 to 2019, right, Kunal?
That's right.
Yeah. So now we're looking at the data right now on the screen is journalists imprisoned in India. So as per the CPJ database, we have 16 journalists imprisoned in India. We've obviously got different names. We have Asif Sultan, Baltej Pannu, Gurdeep Singh, Iftikhar Gilani. They've been, obviously the organization is mentioned. And what I find very interesting, Kunal, in this is these are not, our so-called mainstream known जिसको बोलते हैं ना जो आप जानते हो kind of wali organizations that have so-called connections. All right, most of them are newspapers which must be having a base in the local regional circuit. Am I correct in this understanding?
So that you're right, Kushal. The thing is that according to a research done by CPJ, so I spoke about the safety part of it, but the primary job that CPJ does is to document attacks on journalists. And we've been, as you just showed your listeners, that we had a data from 1992 onwards. And we've done an analysis of the data, and we've found that even globally, nearly 88% of the journalists who are attacked or who have been targeted, whether they're killed or injured, they are local journalists. And in India, in fact, this figure is even higher. You very rightly pointed out that out of this 16 journalists that we have documented from 92. Now, I must tell your viewers/listeners that the way the way we document this names is basically in December, we basically take a call, we check how many journalists are still behind bars, and that's how we put their names in it. So obviously, out of this entire list of 16 journalists, currently only 2 are behind bars, and of course, rest have been let out. So that's the kind of that's how we come on these figures. And yeah, again, to repeat your point, yes, it's absolutely true that most of the journalists who face any kind of any kind of violence, any kind of targeting, are mostly local journalists. It's true globally, and it's even more truer when it comes to our country.
That's true, and this is why I wanted to share these slides, and just to let you guys know, if because some of you are going to listen to this over SoundCloud or Stitcher or Spotify later on. So if you want to go and access the CPJ database, what I've done is in the description of the podcast, whether you watch it later on YouTube or you're going to listen to this later on SoundCloud or any audio only portal, I'm going to share the links of all these pages that I'm sharing. You can just click on the link, and you can just, in the location, you need to type India, and in the range you can type from 1992 to 2019, and all these names are going to pop up, and I'm going to share them one by one. Now, the next page that I was going to share with you all is which is far more sinister, and I was actually personally shocked when I saw this. I was like, so this is 50 journalists have been killed in India between 1992 and 2019. And obviously, this is in the category where motive is confirmed. So obviously, this is from in 2018, where there was Achyutananda Sahu from Doordarshan. I think people remembered this one, right? Because this was quite famous on Twitter. ये वही है ना जो recently Naxal violence case में हुआ था, Kunal?
Yes.
Yeah. So another DD journalist, Altaf Ahmed Faktu. Then you have Aji, Daily Excelsior. And again, I just want to go through the names here. And again, there is a trend here. So I'm on page 1. Then let's see page 2. I just want to be sure, because okay, Dainik Bhaskar is, you can say, mainstream.
But Dainik Bhaskar also is a big big publication, so
Yeah.
they have reporters in every part of the country. So that necessarily does. I mean, he's still a local reporter. What I mean, and you also have IPN there, Rajesh Verma.
Yeah.
He's again a local reporter.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a very, and another thing is, again, we have seen 9 out of 10 journalists who have died in this list have also been specifically targeted for murder, which means that जो हिंदी में कहते हैं ना, सुपारी डाला था उनके ऊपर.
Oh yes.
So
वो
of course here,
मुंबई मिरर वाले थे ना, जो जिनको अंडरवर्ल्ड ने.
yes, that's there. There's also Sujat Bukhari, who was of course a big case in 2018. There is also Gauri Lankesh. These are still bigger names which have come on national media. But then of course there are tons of them. Like, I think out of the 50, perhaps 3 or 4 you might have still heard of them. But rest of them are still quite local journalists who were targeted and killed.
Yeah,
we also have
it's crazy.
We also have a type of death. So you do see that if they were on any assignment, so we have something called dangerous assignments. So perhaps they were on assignments, they were killed. So that's another subcategory.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to understand. So when dangerous assignment basically is, if let's say, for example, they were in a Maoist area and they were covering the Maoist area, and the Maoists attacked them, or if they were,
or in Kashmir or Northeast, or or going as a. So another big trend, Kushal, is sand mining mafia attacking journalists. Last year, actually, we had 5 journalists who were killed in 2017, and out of the 5 journalists, 4 were specifically targeted for murder, and out of those 4, 2 were covering sand mining stories, and they were targeted by sand mining mafia. So that's growingly becoming a big concern in places like Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha. Actually, this gentleman was violently, attacked, with machetes and all. So yeah, that these are kind of very real challenges.
Okay, so let us focus now on this, the safety aspect for a journalist. Now,
Yeah.
we're not talking about anchors who come on television and host debates right now. We're talking about, these are usually your field reporters, people who actually go into the belly of the beast in many cases, or just go into a area where there is this wilderness, and sometimes they just are caught in a crossfire or in the wrong thing. But then, how does a journalist actually train themselves, and how does a journalist actually even get to know? I mean, you're a journalist, so I want to know, and I know it's not necessarily a part of our discussion, but I'm curious to know about this. So do journalists have a kind of a sense of the danger they're in, and how do they manage it? So what would be let's say a budding journalist listens to this, so what would that budding journalist have to do if they are a field reporter in an area full of tension?
I think it's important before going on any assignment that you're aware of the possible dangers, because it's one thing to be you know have a bravado, but that really doesn't work when you go to the field. So it's always good to have a realistic assessment about the possible dangers, whether that's from, as I said, sand mafia, whether they are non-state actors, or for that matter, even politicians. There are a lot of local politicians who have part-time, illegal activities going on, and if they those get so it's important to have a realistic assessment. Unfortunately, in our country, and you and I were discussing about this before we started the podcast, that the companies or the media companies who hire journalists, the aspect of press freedom, security training is very less. There's perhaps none. I think apart from I think when CNN IBN was launched, and perhaps because they had a tie-up with CNN International, they're the only organization that I've heard so far who have had any kind of level of security training. Unfortunately, none of them have, and especially at the local level, it is zero. So I think it's every journalist is left to him or herself, to fend for themselves, and that's the sad part of it. Perhaps that's where organizations like CPJ comes in. There is also RSF, Reporters Without Borders. We are trying to help in whatever little possible way we can. What really helps is that if people like you kind of reach out, and I mean, I'm really happy and glad that you took cognizance of something like this, and if there are more awareness, and then maybe indirectly there is pressure on organizations, because my experience also has been that when I try to reach out to press clubs telling them that, look, we are an organization like this, and we do have something that we can offer you free of charge. By the way, we don't charge anything. We are a non-governmental organization. But then there is always this little bit of apprehension, number one. And secondly, there's this whole thing about this we useless bravado, right? Hum to yahan karte, hum yahan ka zyada jante, tum kya sikha doge types. I mean, of course, they don't tell me on the face, but I can always sense that, that they have this thing ki, hum to jungle ke raja hai types, feeling, which is a very wrong idea, because, it's very nice to go and tell your friends that you saw a dead body, but then the effect that dead body has or a blast has on your psyche, it actually not just traumatizes you, but your entire family. And you have signed up to be a journalist. Your family hasn't. So why do you want to put your family through so much of mess, So I think growingly there is a requirement for every journalist to realize the dangers that comes with their work. And it's not just the thrill. I mean, for example, the protests are going around the country on the issue of CAA and NRC. Now, when the journalist goes to, record and report on those incidences. There should be a lot of do's and don'ts in terms of how do you cover civil unrest. And we have a document which is available on our website. I'm happy to share it with you and your viewers. How do you deal with situations like this? You can't just say that, oh, I'll go. And just if I'm not mistaken, a few days back I saw one of a tweet. I think it was Aditya Raj Kaul or someone had tweeted about a van, a IBN van was burnt in Jammu or somewhere. I don't recall. So I mean, you do have realistic threats from, I mean, all people, because you never know in a situation like a protest, a civil unrest, what happens next. So I think it is very important for journalists to take cognizance of their safety. And also because I am stressing again, you have decided to be a journalist, your family hasn't. So any loss to you also impacts your family. And I'm intentionally bringing it up because India tends to be a very family centric. We have this notion. So even if you are not concerned about your own safety, think about your family, your parents, your wife, your children. Why do you want them to suffer? So it is very important for us to start taking care of our safety, all the journalists, whenever they're out on the field.
Yeah, not only that, I think, I'm sure you guys must be covering that in your training program, but I was also wondering that, a major part of the culture of journalism is also getting to know the internal cultural mechanisms of that area that you're covering. Obviously, more often than not, the field reporter usually is a local citizen from that area. But you've just shared this interesting link with me, so I want to share that too. So this is about physical safety and civil disorder. This is very interesting, actually. So how does one carry themselves out in a crowd? So reporting on crowd violence or mobs can be dangerous. So this is very interesting. So
Can
how
I
do you?
just point out?
Yeah, can you
Can I
take
point
us
out
through
like?
this?
Yeah, no, I mean, let me tell you some simple things. I mean, going through the entire thing might take a little longer, but simple thing, for example, you see contact lenses are not advisable. A lot of us, I mean, now, of course, I don't wear contact lens anymore, but if I was wearing a contact lens and I'm going to report something on the ground, again, it sounds a little elitist because I don't think a local journalist in India mostly wears contact lens, but just brought it up. Uh, your contact lens might just fall off when there is dust or things. And what will happen? You will be partially blind. What do you do in situation like that? Another thing for women, when you're wearing dupatta and you're going to, cover a crowd, what if somebody pulls your dupatta, and your neck gets completely, so again, another thing is to have a ponytail. Don't have a ponytail. Tie your hair properly, because again, somebody can grab your hair and, another example, if there's a photographer who is going to click photographs. Now, when a photographer goes, he or she is so focused on this subject that they forget about their own physical safety, right? So you need to have somebody with you all the time who has your back. Because if you're taking a photograph and somebody comes and hits you from the back, then you're gone. And Kushal, it happened with me actually. When I was in Tehelka, I had gone on a reporting. It was kind of a protest of locals versus government forces over taking over a land for setting up a plant. And I was just trying to help someone, and somebody from back came with a huge danda stick and tried to hit me. And by chance, I just turned, and that danda actually fell on a TV9 photographer, and he just fell with the blood, pouring out. So, these are very practical things that happen to us. So there are these tips which are there in these documents, which, I mean, I understand that sometimes all of it is very difficult to implement, but even if you take up 50 or 60% of these things, you will be physically far more safer than you are at the moment.
Yeah, I actually, I was just going through, as you were mentioning, I was even going through the recommendations you guys have given. I just think, every time I discuss physical safety, the mixed martial arts fan in me just gets completely alert. So I just think, as a policy in general in India, I have been a big votary of training in self-defense and overall awareness in general. I just think organizations in India, whether it's journalistic organizations or any organization that involves you going into areas of or self-defense training for women too. I think self-defense is a very important aspect of anybody's life, and I wish there's some sort of awareness created. I mean, I'm sure you guys are trying, and all the power to you guys at CPJ. I think you guys should definitely look at that aspect too, because I think as a culture, I don't know why we don't believe in self defense. I mean, it's not about beating the other person up, but I'll just give you an example. It's a very simple thing. As a there's something called defense training, like in jiu-jitsu. If somebody charges at you, even if you knew basic judo, you can just catch them by the hip, toss them on the ground, and just pin them down. You don't hurt them, but you don't, at least they don't hurt you. Obviously, that ain't going to work with a mob. So but if you're in a remote location where there is no mob, but there are individual people coming at you, I think there are a lot of things that we can do. And what surprises me, and now let us focus on that. How the hell is a country like India, and it's not like our media companies are small, they are huge conglomerates. How the hell in such a country have we just had one incident where you have said, IBN actually had this kind of a workshop for journalists? Why do you think it is that? Is it a cultural problem that we don't value the lives of people anymore?
I think that's sadly the truth, I guess. I mean, I cannot tell you what the psyche is, but the fact of the matter is that we hardly have any such trainings, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. I hope it changes. I mean, I have honestly had good feedback from a lot of organizations that I have reached out to, and particularly smaller ones. In Hyderabad, for example, there used to be a news channel which has now been shut down called Mojo TV. Its editor, it's a woman editor. She was very forthcoming, and she took in the inputs and implemented a lot of those inputs that we gave. Also, I think culturally we never thought about journalist safety. I mean, there is this weird bravado always attached to being a reporter, perhaps. But I think things are changing, but I think they need to change at a much faster pace. Again, I honestly don't have an answer to your question why the hell it's not the situation.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, if you ask me personally, I mean, obviously I'm not a journalist, but I'm just going by whatever little I've heard from you in our past or now, and by reading through the literature you provided to me on CPJ. I just think we're a mediocre society that just does not place the value. I mean, sometimes I feel 130 crore log hain, kuch mar gaye to kya ho gaya, is actually literally the attitude in this country. इसीलिए हमारे देश में
Yeah, but the other thing also, Kushal, which comes to the larger issue of press freedom, you see, I mean, somehow we do not give that level of importance, both politically as well as, I won't say socially, because, I think you would also vouch for it. I think we have all grown up reading newspapers. We have seen our uncles and aunts and fathers and mothers and grandfathers reading at least 2 to 3 newspapers every day. There is a culture, and at least in certain parts of the country. I mean, I come from, I'm a Bengali, but I grew up in Bihar, and my father till date, he reads at least 3 newspapers. There's been a culture of reading newspapers, but when it comes to politicians or when it comes to big corporate houses running media, the importance of press freedom, I think or even freedom of expression for that matter, has never been a priority. Politicians like talking about it when they're in opposition because it's just a political issue for them. But once they are in power, they continue to use the same laws to go after journalists. I mean, that's the saddest part. And I mean, I was, again, you and I were talking about this before we started the podcast, that how a lot of post-colonial countries, countries which were colonized, continue to have laws that were brought in by colonizers to target journalists. I mean, the people have fought against those laws. I mean, for example, in India, why do we still have the sedition law? Why do you still have defamation? I mean, for that matter, we have both civil and criminal defamation. Get rid of the criminal defamation at least. I mean, you can still have this civil if you feel like. But I mean, personally, I feel both of them. So, I mean, the problem is that and you look at a place like, for example, Chhattisgarh. Again, I'm not trying to be political, but these are facts that 15 years of when Raman Singh government was in place, over 15 journalists were either killed, attacked, killed, attacked, imprisoned, or charged with sedition. They came up with a Public Safety Act, and can you believe it? Who was the first person to be arrested under that act? A journalist. I mean, so the problem again, I don't think that it is the party specific ideological issue. It's generally all politicians in this country do not give importance to press freedom as they should. They only look at it as a political issue. That's the sad part.
I actually totally agree with you. I think when it comes to freedom of expression and, you know, basically letting people, including journalists, at the end of the day, journalists are citizens of this country too. And, you know, when it comes to that, nobody, and I repeat, nobody in the political class actually wants freedom of expression. And, you know, it's right down from the First Amendment. I mean, if people forget, why did Nehru put the First Amendment? Because people had started criticizing him, and it all culminated from that. It's like, यार ये तो उल्टा हो गया, ये आज तक तो अंग्रेजों को बोल रहे थे, ये तो मुझे बोलना शुरू हो गए, बंद करो. Reasonable restrictions le aaye. And whether it's Congress, whether it's BJP, whether it's any state government in India, they all of them in tandem go after the journalist beyond a point. So obviously the line is arbitrary, it depends. And I think फिर भी, you know, when it comes to going after the press, national level पे बीजेपी और कांग्रेस लीडर्स में मैच्योरिटी है. ये मेरा ओपिनियन है. People can disagree with me.
Well, maturity nahi hai. I'm not going to go into that. What I would like to point out is that at the local level, because मैं क्या बोलूं, focus नहीं है. Basically, national level में focus ज़्यादा होता है.
मैं तुम्हें एग्जांपल देता हूँ, एक tangible एग्जांपल देता हूँ. Let us assume मैं मुंबई के एक वार्ड में रहता हूँ, ठीक है. सबसे ज्यादा जर्नलिज्म की अगर किधर जरूरत होती है, ये मेरा ओपिनियन है, अगेन पीपल कैन डिसएग्री विद मी, होती है म्युनिसिपल लेवल पे. म्युनिसिपल लेवल पे सबसे ज्यादा पैसे खाने का काम होता है इंडिया में. सबसे ज्यादा पैसे म्युनिसिपल लेवल पे खाए जाते हैं. लोगों को ये विश्वास नहीं होगा कि पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज की किट्टी चलती है म्युनिसिपैलिटी से. म्युनिसिपैलिटी चलाती है इस देश की पॉलिटिकल पार्टियों को. नहीं तो बॉम्बे म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन के लिए लोग इतना तितर बितर के होते हैं. लोगों को ये आइडिया नहीं है कि अगर कोई जर्नलिस्ट जाएगा और एक लोकल म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेटर, लेट अस अज्यूम एक इमेजिनरी गार्डन है, अभी गार्डन में रेती भरी जाती है फॉर प्लांटेशन, म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन करती है. अभी समझ लो वो गार्डन में लगने चाहिए 50 डंपर और आते हैं 150 डंपर. और अगर कोई जर्नलिस्ट उसको आरटीआई के अंदर डाल के उसको करेगा तो वो जर्नलिस्ट टपका दिया जाएगा लोकल लेवल पे, या उसको फंसा दिया जाएगा.
You're right. बॉम्बे तो फिर भी सिचुएशन बेटर है. मुंबई, बिकॉज यू नो, I mean, it's still a urban space. So फिर भी मतलब अगर एक भी कुछ हुआ तो फिर भी the chances of journalists standing together. And for example, Mumbai has a very active press, media journalist community. वहाँ पे Mumbai Press Club है, पत्रकार संघ है, पत्रकार परिषद है. So थोड़े एक्टिव हैं. बट चक्कर है कि मुंबई से अगर आप बाहर निकलो, यहाँ और सिचुएशन खराब है. और इसका एक दूसरा एंगल भी ये है कुशल. एंगल ये है कि जो लोकल जर्नलिस्ट है ना, उसको पैसे भी ज्यादा नहीं मिलते. सो देयर इज ऑलवेज दिस अदर साइड एक्विजिशन. एक्यूज किया जाता है जर्नलिस्ट को कि वो ब्लैकमेल करता है, वो पैसा खाता है. I'm just the way, some of you from the right have an issue with journalists at the national level. Similarly, there is a criticism of journalists at the local level also. That's also because it's linked to the business model. You see, lot of local journalists are expected to do both journalism as well as get advertisement for the publication. Ab wo business model is so queered. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm using the word queered, screwed, is basically ab journalist अपना काम करे कि वो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के लिए पैसा लाए, बिकॉज उसकी सैलरी जो है वो पार्टली डिपेंडेंट है कमीशन बेसिस पे. तो द बिजनेस मॉडल इटसेल्फ इज आल्सो इन अ वेरी bad situation. And that's why we do keep hearing a lot of, and when, so for example, just recently there was a case in Andhra Pradesh, and we covered it. A journalist was killed, and again, a very top police officer from the state, he called me at night, and he, spoke to me over half an hour, trying to convince me that how this particular journalist was affiliated with the opposition party, and he was using his thing to, make money and all of that. And so the thing is that, again, I don't know who is right, who is wrong, but the fact is that a journalist did get killed, and why is a journalist, if a journalist is at all going into, trying to make money outside his profession, is primarily because the business model itself is so, broken at the moment. And especially now with the advent of internet, the traditional newspapers and the जो मॉडल था न्यूज़पेपर एंड टेलीविजन चैनल का, वो भी खत्म होते जा रहा है. So there's a lot of challenge. So that's why we do find a situation. So I'm also not trying to take a stand and say that, okay, all journalists are fair and blah blah. But the fact of the matter is that situation is very bad, and then there are a lot of the other people in the society who are taking use of this situation to, get what they want. Sadly, that's the situation. That's the fact.
Actually, now that you've raised this topic, let us dig in a little deeper. And this is a serious problem with India. The overall credibility, not of journalists per se, but of the field of journalism, media in general. And this is not just, restricted to India. This is becoming a global phenomenon, and I'm worried about it. I remember a while ago, I had this discussion. I'm not going to take the name of the journalist because that's not nice. And I was having this discussion with the person, and I was like, you do realize how much damage Delhi media has done to the profession of journalism in general? And the journalist was like, how? I was like, it doesn't matter whether you're a pro BJP channel or a pro Congress channel. When you leave the job of a journalist, which is basically reporting facts, and you can report what has happened, and I'll draw my own conclusions on the basis of my ideological affiliations. That's okay. We are entitled to our opinions. We're not entitled to our facts. Facts are facts, right? And today what has happened is we just don't know what the facts are, and it's just a mess all over. And then you hear stuff like Radia happen, and various other things. And what saddens me in this entire process is that and every time people will come to me and be like, are I don't want to take the name of a paper again, but fala mainstream publication is fake news, or it's this or it's that. I mean, I get it, there is a lot of rubbish in the papers also. I mean, people literally take money to print articles, and I think it's a cultural problem in India. But obviously there are good journalists too. So Kunal, how do we kind of save the good journalists from this overall mess? How do you think those good journalists are going to save themselves from this basic mess?
See, I don't want to get into giving certificates. I'm no one. I'm much junior than a lot of people, and I'm no one to be giving certificate of credibility to any media house or any journalist for that matter. But what I see is that overall there are two major issues. One is that there is a huge, we spoke about this a little while back. There's a huge issue with business model. There is no business model. There is no sustainable business model. When there is no sustainable business model, what happens? A news organization, whether that's a newspaper or a television, is dependent on the government for advertisement.
True.
That's number one. Second, even if it is not direct advertisement, whoever owns the news channel wants to push whoever is in power, or even if it's in opposition, but would obviously come to power the next term, uska jo agenda hai, they try to push that. So there is two ways of, why do you have a news organization? If you're not making money, you will have to sustain somehow. So to sustain somehow, you either take money from the government in terms of government advertisements, and Government of India as well as state governments have huge budgets when it comes to advertisements. And the second thing is that if you And the second thing is that even if you do not get enough advertisements, you at least are pushing somebody's agenda because you've been propped up to push someone's agenda. Let's be frank. Whether that's somebody's political agenda, sometimes even, for example, certain lobbies. You would have certain industry lobbies want to push a particular regulation or get rid of a regulation, want to get rid of environmental laws for this particular thing, so that particular thing. So what I'm trying to tell you is that in absence of a business model, there are compromises which the owners of the organization, the company makes. And those compromises then sips in from the owner to the management to the editor to the reporter. It's a food chain, kind of upar se niche tak. The other aspect is that refusal of our political class to accept the fact that press freedom is sacrosanct. It's really saddening, and I won't mention the city or the press club, but very recently there was an election in a state, and I had gone with this election kit, and I had we translated the kit into the language, and we distributed, and then I was sitting in the office of this press club, and very posh, very nicely done. I won't say word posh, but nicely done a press club, and suddenly this gentleman walks in who says he's a journalist and has previously worked with the government in some capacity, starts talking about how, the same logic, like whenever you talk about press freedom, you start saying, but journalist ne to ye kiya tha, journalist ne to wo kiya tha, wo journalist ye karta, ye journalist. It's this what aboutry, which has become, you being so frequent, such an active user of Twitter, the same thing. So that's what. And then when I started but I said, but, and then he said, but you have to understand, in India, and believe me, this is a journalist, at least somebody who claims to be journalist, and not a bacha, like somebody, I think he must have at least had 10 to 15 years experience, or perhaps more than that. He said, but you have to understand, unlike in America, press freedom is not absolute in India. What do you tell a journalist who himself says, मैं ही self censor कर लेता अपने आप को? Instead of pushing the envelope and saying, okay, we need more freedom, I am not saying that if somebody is, publishing a lie, or somebody is pushing something which is, has a certain slant, go ahead, write about it, expose that person. Today with social media, there is so much of this stuff. But for heaven's sake, don't self-censor. Don't say that मैं ये नहीं लिखूंगा क्योंकि मैं तो इस लीडर का भक्त हूं, या मैं इस लीडर का बहुत बड़ा सपोर्टर हूं, तो ये लीडर तो कभी गलत ही नहीं बोल सकता. So the thing is that if journalists themselves start self-censoring and saying that in India press freedom is not absolute, or press freedom of expression is not absolute, which is true. Factually it is true that freedom of expression, from where press freedom comes, is not absolute. It is with reasonable restrictions, but the definition is so vague that whichever political party or whichever judge decides to interpret it based on whoever is in power, it could be anything. Reasonable restriction could be from national security to social harmony to anything for that matter. So the problem is that journalists have to realize that you can't self-censor and say कि मैं इस बात पे चुप रहूंगा. There are so many issues. For example, today at the moment, and I again don't know if this is the right forum to bring it up. In Kashmir, for example, there are 2 journalists who are behind bars, and both the cases are so black and white. They're not even if, but. One journalist has been in jail since August last year, not this August when the clampdown happened and the change of the status. Last year, Asif Sultan has been in jail. He was picked up. Why? Because he wrote a cover story on this militant / terrorist. Forget the name. So he read a cover story. Usko pick up kar liya. Pehla, they kept him behind bars for 7 days without, arresting him formally. What they would do is on the document, they would write that he has been left at night, but he literally lives he stays in the police station. Mm-hmm. They continue, and then on the 6th or the 7th day, some activist goes there and tries to create a hangama. Khundak mein aake, the SP decides to file a case against him. And then in an existing case, backdate करके उसका नाम डाल दिया जाता है उसमें. The government at the moment says the only evidence that they have against him is a letterhead allegedly from Hizbul Mujahideen. Now the thing is that I honestly think that as anybody who wants to, who has a level mind, you can be from any ideology, doesn't matter. You could be a nationalist, you could be a leftist, you could be a right wing nationalist, you could be a left wing nationalist, you could be anybody. You might want tomorrow all Kashmiris to be integrated, move in, mainland people there and all of it. That doesn't matter. But at least sense of justice to hona chahiye. I mean, वो हो सकता है कि आसिफ से एग्री भी ना करो, बट आसिफ को उस दिन से लेके आज तक बेल नहीं मिला है. इसको बेसिक बेल इज अ बेसिक ह्यूमन राइट. And if you're saying all Kashmiris are Indians, then bloody let implement the laws ना. आपने उसको बेल तक नहीं दिया. और ऐसा नहीं है कि वो कोई बड़ा मिलिटेंट है या कुछ बड़ा केस है. सरकार ने बड़ा केस भी नहीं लगाया. उसको बस इसी बात पे है कि आपके यहाँ डॉक्यूमेंट मिला हुआ है. उस दिन से लेके बंदा आज तक जेल में है. उसका एक 20 साल की बच्ची है, अभी शादी हुआ था हाल फिलहाल में. द फादर, इनफैक्ट टुडे इन द मॉर्निंग, to give me an update because there was a hearing yesterday, and in the hearing again the police's witness himself has said that he had wo mukar gaya. Basically he said that no, I didn't see it. So the thing is that, and that child, 20-month-old kid, recognizes her father, because obviously she hasn't seen him since more than a year now. So I'm saying that things like these, why can't we look at, why do we need to have double standards? Can't we just have a simple sense of justice? That's all I'm requesting. Have a sense of willing to, I'm not saying to accept others' point of view, but willing to tolerate others' point of view, and have a sense of justice where you do not throw people behind bars because you don't agree with someone's reporting. Number one. The other case, for example, another case which is from Kashmir, and this case is, again, this journalist basically tweets about some troop movements or something before the clampdown begins. He is taken to the thana. He's kept in the thana for 6 days. And usko परिवार वालों को थानेदार continuously बोलता है कि we'll let him out, we'll let him out. So the family did not raise the matter also with the press or anybody, because they thought, because the general thing in India is that अगर यह मामला सॉर्ट आउट हो सकता है जो सॉर्ट आउट कर लो बिना मतलब का, बिकॉज मामला जब बड़ा हो जाता है तो पुलिस जानबूझ के और केसेस डाल देती है. सो दे आल्सो थॉट कि चलो लेट सॉर्ट दिस आउट. देन दिस थिंग हैपेंस एंड द फैमिली लूजेस इन टच विद द गाय. दे डोंट नो वेयर ही इज, काजी श्रिबली. After nearly 2 months or 1.5 months, I don't remember the exact duration, they finally discover, and they're trying, and with this clampdown and everything, they're trying to find out. There is no communication. Where the hell is their, the son, the brother of the family? And they finally find out with help of another of his brother who is based in Delhi, that he has been charged under PSA and he's put in Bareilly jail. Now the thing is that abhi uska, under PSA you can be put behind bars for 2 years without any trial. So the thing is that, what are we doing? Where is our sense of justice? And now imagine, I mean, I don't even want to get into the political story, but what will an average Kashmiri journalist think? I mean, कोई hardcore कुछ होता है केस तो मुझे फिर भी समझ में आता है, यहाँ तो कुछ नहीं है. And these are like based on, and you're trying to, I mean, I have done a detailed piece on the state of Kashmiri media. I mean, people might agree on it, disagree on it. They might agree with the government clampdown. That's another point of view. But I mean, please feel free to read it. I'm happy to send the link across. But I mean, these are some of the examples that I really feel that, at least when it comes to press freedom, freedom of expression, we all need to accept on a standard definition. We cannot say that press freedom is okay if only, if they don't write against my favorite leader, if only this doesn't happen, this. If and but ke saath press freedom nahi ho sakta. Press freedom has to either be absolute or there is no press freedom. Either you accept that you're a third world country, non-industrialized, as our common friend Abhijit Iyer Abhitra keeps telling, and we are a bunch of, banana republic people who don't need press freedom, or you say that we need press freedom and we accept the, the things that come with press freedom. Sorry for an emotional outburst.
Oh no, no. So that's why I did not want to cut you off, because it is very important that you should share these stories, and it doesn't matter how much it triggers the people who listen to my podcast regularly, because everybody knows that most of the listeners, or the viewership of my podcast falls into the BJP RSS spectrum. But this is even more important because I want them to listen to this. I want them to listen to these views. I got a lot of pushback when I'd gotten Ifra Jan on my podcast to discuss Kashmir and how she was not for the removal of Article 370. But it does not matter, because at the end of the day, we live in this country. We are 1.3 billion people in this landmass together. And you know what? Whether we like it or not, we can't get away with each other. We have to learn to live with each other. It doesn't matter if I agree with you or I disagree with you. What we need to understand is that freedom of speech is sacrosanct. And if I want to stand up for, and you know what the real test of freedom of speech is? When you stand up for the freedom of speech of the one you disagree with. That is the real test.
Exactly.
So I will always stand up for the freedom of speech for someone and somebody who I actually disagree with. Now, somebody will say, "Oh, what is the point of that? They will not do it to you." I don't know. A, I don't know. B, I don't care. I can't be immoral and unethical because the other side is. We either fight for democracy. Look, our founding fathers and our freedom fighters, they did not struggle so that we become a banana republic. They struggled so that we progress. And I'm not a pessimist by nature. I believe India is becoming better on almost all parameters other than climate change on a daily basis. I think in the India today is far, far better than the Indias at least I was born in. The 80s India was mediocre.
Well,
Today,
yeah, a few days back, a Western journalist who covers India extensively and is a little, again, pro BJP RSS inclined, and we were debating about Jamia, and she said, "Oh, these things also happen in the West. You think too much of the West." The thing is that I don't think too much of the West. I think too much of my country. We always keep talking about 5,000, 7,000 years of civilization. This is the country where so many religions has evolved from, has come up. And that I, for example, I don't hide, for example, my religious beliefs. I mean, I'm a Buddhist. I very openly promote Buddhism. I talk about Buddhism. I practice Buddhism. And I am not one of those people who say that, and again, I'm doing this again and again, I'm repeating that I'm doing this podcast in my personal capacity, not as a CPJ correspondent. But I am not one who says that, you shouldn't talk about your religious beliefs, or you should just keep it behind closed doors, or, whatever thing. The thing is that as an Indian, and as somebody who believes in the goodness of our country, I really believe that we deserve better. A. Second, I really believe that we need to have higher standards for ourselves. I don't give a flying S about, whether we are trying to be in America, or we are trying to be in Europe, or any Western country. We are not. I have high regards for my own country. And in my own country, I think that every aspect of freedom, every aspect of human rights, every aspect of civil discourse, every aspect of civil right should be of the highest standard, because that's what our culture stands for. That's what all our religious books, our non-religious books, our literature has all spoken about. We have not heard anywhere about, I mean, we've only continuously heard through history, through mythology, how oppressors have been defeated. We've never heard about oppressors being, celebrated. So I think that I have, as an Indian, have very high standards, and I look up to my own country. I don't need to look to a West or an America or any other country for that matter to tell me what is the right, human rights levels, or what's the press freedom level. I only look at to my country, and I think we should be more self-conscious, and we should be more. I mean, I don't want to have an inferiority complex in that, for that matter. I don't even want to have a superiority complex, but I want to look up to my own country and expect better of us, rather than saying ki, you can't be this or you can't be that, or yahan bhi hota hai, wahan bhi hota hoga, kya farak padta hai? I mean, why should I continuously be on press freedom issues? Why should I continuously be comparing myself with America or Europe? On other issues, why should I be comparing myself with Pakistan, Bangladesh, or other South Asian countries? I don't want to. I have far higher standards. So yeah.
It's a perfect time to share one more screen then that you had sent me. This is the global impunity index that you guys have at CPJ, where you talk
Yeah.
about the impunity with which so basically when it comes to getting away with murder, right? This is a year by year graph of getting away with murder. Obviously India is doing fantastic, just above Afghanistan, I mean, and Colombia, obviously. And I just wanted to share this one. So this is an index rank where India is overall 13. Basically we've had no change. And you guys have two categories, right, in this?
I think you have unsolved cases. So I think India stands at number 13 in this year's impunity index, which means that globally, when it comes to getting away with killing journalists, we are at 13 number, which basically means that those cases have not been solved. And I think overall around 17 journalist murders have not been resolved in this country. Again, I mean, thankfully we did see, I think, two cases in last 1 year or year and a half which were solved. One was the J-Day murder in Mumbai. You remember
Yes.
the
Yeah.
journalist who was killed by underground. And then there is another case where in Haryana, where one of the godmen was sent to, I think he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Chhatrapati, I think this journalist name was Chhatrapati something, I forgot the name. So we have had two cases, but overall the situation is very bad. Ramchandra Chhatrapati. So Baba Ram Rahim, Gurmeet Ram Rahim was actually arrested and sentenced to life for his murder. But apart from that, the situation otherwise has not been good. And especially you find places, for example, just the other day, one second, sorry. So just the other day, we got a call from the father of a Jharkhand journalist, Chandan Tiwari, who was murdered last year. We had covered his case. Chandan's father says that the police had arrested a few suspects and they've been let off, and now there's a lot of pressure on the family. As it happens in small towns, and things become far worse in small towns. The family is being pressured to withdraw the case. So things like it's a classic example of what happens to a journalist family once a journalist is killed. Then in places like Tripura, for example, CBI has been investigating a case for God knows how many years. That's not been resolved. So we have a terrible track record when it comes to solving journalist killing. I would also acknowledge that it's not just limited to journalist killing. We have a terrible track record when it comes to general, investigation when it comes to anybody's killing in this country. I mean, especially if there are politically sensitive cases. And with journalists, I think 9 out of 10 killings are politically sensitive. So inevitably, they get dragged on and on for years until unless there is a political will to get those cases solved.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this has nothing to do with any political affiliation. It's just the same story everywhere in the country. But it's time that we've almost hit the hour mark. So before we wrap things up, so my last question to you, Kunal, would be, considering how the state of affairs are, so are you optimistic, pessimistic, or you're neither here neither there? And what do you think is the road ahead?
uh, uh, I still believe in our country, Kushal. I mean, both of us might have different political ideologies, but I do believe that somebody has just on the chat has said, ironically, CPJ has reported falsely that journalist Atish Tasir OCI was cancelled because he spoke against Mr. Modi. No, it's not falsely reported. It is a fact. And that something has been documented quite properly, Nikhil, because if you look at what the Prime Minister said after the cover story was out, and subsequently what the BJP spokespeople said about Atish, it's quite clear that they really had a thing against him. And secondly, no mention that he lied on his application. Again, it's a technical case. I mean, you should please, Nikhil, read the details of the case, because A, his parents were not married. Secondly, his mother was the sole guardian. Thirdly, he came to know about his father and kind of reconciled with his father at the age of 21. The government of India did issue him an OCI, and he lived in India his entire life. I mean, it's only recently that he moved abroad. So for so long, the government did nothing about it. So, and if indeed he did lie on his application, then why did the government at all, allow for an OCI to be offered to him? So it's a little more complex case, but I would really request Nikhil to look at the details. Now, coming back to our country, Kushal, I am optimistic about my country because I do believe in my country, and I do believe, and you and I have discussed this, that we are largely a free, we love freedom. We are a country which believes in freedom. Yes, sometimes we do get swayed here and there, but largely, we have seen situations like emergency when newspapers were not allowed to function properly. We have seen situations where there have been, clampdowns, and people have spoken up against it, and politicians come and go. I mean, I only hope that sooner than later we realize the importance of this freedom and how lucky we are. I like to conclude by giving this example. The other day I was that I was volunteering in Bodh Gaya with an NGO there, and we were I was talking with a few Indians, and there was also somebody from Singapore, a nun. She was also sitting there, and we were having lunch, and we were chatting, and we Indians, there were basically 3 Indians and 1 Singaporean, and we were talking about the state of country, and we were like, lamenting, and we're like, oh, this is not good, and that is not, very typically left liberal conversation, if I may call it so. And then we started saying that, oh, we need to move out of the country, not me, one of them said, we need to move out of the country and blah, blah. And then this particular gentleman looks at the nun who's Singaporean and says, oh, we should move to Singapore, and then the nun turns around after a little while and she says, at least here you can sit down and have this conversation. In Singapore, even this won't be allowed. So the thing is that we should cherish the freedom that we have. And I am very optimistic that as a nation, as people, we don't believe in restricting our freedom of expression, freedom of thought, even for that matter, press freedom. And sooner than later, we realize it's better to speak our mind and tolerate, if not respect, others' point of view, rather than force people to toe a line, because that is a recipe for disaster in any country. And if we were to look, because I've seen a lot of people look at the West as, role models. There's a lot of, again, because most of your listeners are BJP and RSS supporters, and there are a lot of, NRIs and people who live in US and Europe who support BJP and RSS and Mr. Modi, and including my own cousins, by the way, in US. I've seen them appreciate the life that they live in US, or appreciate the life that they live in Europe. And they live that life in Europe because it comes not just with the economic prosperity, but also with a certain level of civil, not just certain level, actually, a lot of civil liberty and civil rights. And we cannot, and of course press freedom is very much part of that. So seeing that, how can you expect us, if we want to be, at least economically prosperous as well as have a healthy, civil discourse, we also need to have a similar kind of a situation. But again, I'm not trying to compare with the West and all, but just as role models, if there are any countries which have, press freedom as sacrosanct, it is obviously America and European countries, maybe Canada as well. So and Australia. So I would really urge people to think about what a situation was going to be, because today, for example, you have a political party in power, so you support the a political party, and you feel it's absolutely fine if that a political party goes up after a B news outlet. But tomorrow, a C political party is going to come to power and is perhaps going to promote the B political outlet, but go after the D political media outlet. So I'm just saying that people need to understand that, what goes around comes back. And lastly, let me just conclude by saying, as a Buddhist, as an Indian, also perhaps as a country with such a huge, the largest Hindu population, karma is definite, So just by thinking that, मैंने ये कर दिया, देखा जाएगा, it's going to come back to bite you, and in heart of heart that you're doing something wrong. And I always bring karma to every aspect of my personal as well as professional life, because it's going to come to bite you, and nothing is permanent in this world, believe me. All our religions tell about it, all our philosophies talk about it. Nothing is permanent. So please be careful about what you're wishing for. So that's all.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. I think that's a very fair expectation in a country. At the end of the day, if we can't value freedom, I think, I've always said this. For me, the what I place at the highest pedestal is freedom. Why do I place freedom at the highest pedestal? Is that if there is no freedom, nothing else comes. And you know what has happened is, in this today's world of social media driven, you know hyperventilation, what happens is it's very easy to pick up the lowest common denominator argument on the other side. So, and this happens all the time. So whether it's on the left, they will pick up the worst argument on the Hindutva side,
Hmm.
the worst argument on the RSS, VHP, BJP side, and they will present it as the mainstream argument of the BJP side. And then the Hindutva side will pick up the most kooky left winger out there. मतलब उसको
Yeah.
ढूंढ के निकालेंगे वो लोग,
Yeah.
बोलेंगे देखो ये करना चाहते हैं. And it suits you, because at the end of the day, the nature of the medium, social media, is built to hack into your negativity bias.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But for me, at the end of the day, look, I'm very clear. I will never compromise on my ideals, but I will always stand up for the freedom of everyone, unless they are directly inciting violence. If you're directly inciting
Absolutely.
violence, I am not with you. Other than that, you have every right to say, I mean, and I do think America is the global standard. I mean, America is amazing that you can burn your flag and it's part of freedom of expression. You can kneel down to an anthem and it's part of your freedom of expression. You can burn a religious text and tear it into pieces and it's part of your freedom of expression. Would I do any of that? No, but we should have the right to do it. And that's what freedom is all about.
Absolutely. 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 And I think we should also stop questioning each other's, patriotism just because your method of expression is not equal to mine. And I also agree with and you and I have discussed this so many times, that politicians are politicians. They will always try to look for the lowest common denominator. That's why, because they will never kind of, because they want to pick up a topic which doesn't require you to think. They will pick up the easiest possible thing and then twist it, and that goes across all ideologies, and I have no kind of qualms accepting that. And again, throughout all my reporting, believe me, I have seen press freedom violation by all political parties. Not one single one can come and tell me that we didn't do it. And let me also conclude on a very positive note. Today in this country, one state has already passed a press journalist safety bill, and another is currently working on a journalist safety bill. The first state in this country to pass a journalist safety bill was actually Maharashtra under BJP. And the second state which is currently working on a journalist safety bill is Chhattisgarh government, Congress Chhattisgarh government, which promised a journalist safety bill in its manifesto. And they're currently working on a draft. There is a committee which has been formed, headed by a former Supreme Court judge, and they've come up with the first draft. There have been some feedback, and they're working on a second one. So the positive thing is that if politicians want, and if we can manage to convince them, they can also be of good use, because they know that they need media, I mean, at the end of the day. So it is very important to handle them properly, and it is very important also for general public to not get swayed by, I have seen when I was in Tehelka, BJP, which otherwise always opposed Tehelka because of Tehelka's sting against the last to last BJP government, Vajpayee government. But whenever I called up BJP leaders, they were always willing to speak to me because they wanted to be seen published in Tehelka. Secondly, when Congress government went after Tehelka during the UPA era, because Tehelka had published a number of stories on the 2G scam and the coal scam and all of it. And I remember Maran used to be the telecom minister. He had said a lot of things against Tehelka when Tehelka did the sting operation. It was Mr. Ravi Shankar, the current law minister,
Prasad,
who actually, Ravi Shankar Prasad, who actually did a press conference and defended Tehelka's, freedom of press, right to publish something like that. So the thing is that if we start now looking at political parties as our barometer for deciding whether to support a media organization or a B media organization, then we are doomed. We need to look at it neutrally, because today a political party will support a outlet if they feel that the outlet is publishing something which is more supportive of them or suits their politics. Tomorrow they will also give galis to the political the outlet and say that you're anti-national, you're this and that, because that does not suit their. So if we start looking at political parties for deciding what the national how we should as a nation look at all our rights, then we are doomed, because their political party's sole purpose is to be in power, though they will claim that they want to change the country. But the fact of the matter is, tell me one politician who wants to give up power voluntarily. Nobody. Every politician has to be either thrown out. They leave their office either by vote, but कोई खुशी खुशी नहीं बोलता है कि ओ इसके बाद मैं प्राइम मिनिस्टर नहीं बनूंगा, इसके बाद मैं इलेक्शन नहीं लड़ूंगा. I think the only politician in the world, I think, who has voluntarily given up is George Washington, who formed founding father of America. So that's why I think we should not constantly let our minds to be diluted by political discourse, because political discourse, rhetoric, as you rightly pointed out, is for targeting the lowest common denominator. And it is to stay in power or to push for a political point. That's not necessarily what's the right thing or what's good for the country.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of times I think people are too much drawn into the weeds of "Arey falana media company iski hai, uski hai." Look, at the end of the day, I'm no fan of media. Like, I'm very open about it. I have not watched mainstream news discussions for the last 5-6 years now. I don't watch it. It's a waste of time. I believe I much rather read a book. I do follow a few journalists whom I respect, and I think the future of journalism is something of, there is a journalist in America called Tim Pool. Now, again, I might ideologically disagree with Tim Pool on many things because Tim Pool is far more left of center than I would ever be. but I can trust him. I think he's a good journalist. I think he practices amazing journalism, and I think the future of journalism is somewhere like in the Uber or Ola model, where, you know, because of technology and the internet and 4G 5G becoming accessible in the next decade to everybody, I think it's going to be field reportage is going to be done by individuals, and then you'll have, you know, the crowdfunding model where there will be thousands of Tim Pools across India who will be, you know, making beat reports, and you'll be going on the digital space and following that. And I think in this entire mess, I think that is to me going to be the solution. And, you know, all this whataboutery about, अरे तुम्हारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने ये किया, अरे तुमने वो पॉलिटिकल पार्टी के साथ ये किया, भाई पूरा समाज ही थर्ड क्लास है, तुम क्या बातें कर रहे हो, पूरा समाज ही
I
ऐसा है.
think, sorry, एक चीज मैं, I mean, very nicely you pointed it out, but ये मैंने स्टार्टिंग में भी इसी चीज से शुरुआत किया था. देखो यार, हर मीडिया ऑर्गेनाइजेशन कोई ना कोई ओन करता है, और कोई गरीब इंसान मीडिया ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ओन नहीं करता. बहुत मतलब एटलीस्ट जो बड़े बड़े दिल्ली बॉम्बे बेस्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस है, छोटे छोटे हैं, these are people who, you know, they believe in certain things and they run it from their pocket of their from their pocket, from the money from their pocket. But the thing is that big organizations always, the owners always have some or the other agenda. And we spoke about the business model, we spoke about how to survive. They will have to be dependent on whoever is in power or whoever is in opposition but is expected to come to power, or has some way to, you know, contribute towards their own benefit. Many media organizations, the owners have multiple business interests outside media. And I mean, I don't want to take names. You take a list of organizations who are brainstorming and saying great things about Prime Minister Modi. Their owners have been member of parliaments from Congress party. For heaven's sake, when you look at them, what do you think? Why do they do this? Because they have to survive. They have business interests. They know that they cannot survive if the government stops giving advertisements. They know that they cannot survive if the government decides to withdraw, let's say, the radio license from the Airport Authority of India. Or they decide that the government is going to crack down on some mining interest that they have. So big organizations have different, and these, but media owners is not equal to journalists. We need to realize that a journalist who enters the professions, आज जर्नलिज्म पास करके जाता है, उसको क्या मालूम कि उसका बिजनेस, उसके मालिक का क्या बिजनेस इंटरेस्ट है. वो तो पत्रकारिता ही करने गया ना, वो तो ऑल गुडनेस के साथ पत्रकारिता करने गया. अब उसमें कोई मैनिपुलेट हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है, which is a sad part. And that's where I think we can counter that if we, I mean, you very beautifully brought out, if we could have alternative models where we individual journalists can, you know, do their thing without compromising on their ethics. Today you're talking about this political party, that, so this organization, that organization. Today, in so many parts of this country and including nationally, there are media platforms and outlets which have been launched just to push a political agenda. Just, it is not that they happen to be, I mean, there are a lot of organizations, for example, right wing doesn't like, they say that they push a certain, you know, left wing agenda, or they're anti BJP and blah blah and all of that. But that's not their core purpose. They might be doing it as because of their editorial policy. But there are also n number of outlets at local level. Look at Assam, look at Andhra Pradesh, look at Telangana, look at Tamil Nadu, look at Kerala, look at I think Maharashtra. I don't remember if Maharashtra has it. All these places have television channels which have directly either been floated by political parties or indirectly floated by political parties. At the national level also, we have one particular news outlet which has been directly floated by a member of parliament associated with the ruling party. And then there are also other television channels, for example, because of their business links, based on whoever is in power, they decide to suck up to them. Tomorrow Congress will come to power, they will suck up to Congress. So let's say there is a, you know, loose collision of lot of these united front kind of thing, usko karenge. Chakkar ye hai. The thing is that you cannot decide on press freedom by looking at ownership of media organizations, because media owners will work like an industrialist. Journalists are not industrialists. We need to make that distinction.
I agree with you. Journalists can't work like that. But again, I think the way things are, the future lies in what I said: individual journalism and crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. And I'm overall very optimistic. But I think we've now spoken for an hour and 20 minutes. But
Yeah, yeah, lot.
so 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 let us wrap things up. So guys, once again, have an open mind. Listen to what he has said. Try and digest what he's saying. Don't look at him as a part of a field where there are some people whom you may not like. Look at him as an individual journalist. Study his claims and then rebut him on those claims. If we can do that, then I think we have achieved something. So you know what, that the aim, what I try to do through this podcast, and every time I get someone who's not into the BJP RSS mold, the comment section gets lit up. But I don't care. I personally want people who listen to this podcast to get used to listening to people whom they disagree with. Because once again I repeat, 130 करोड़ लोग हैं, सारे एक दूसरे से मानने नहीं वाले। ओ भाई, मैं मेरे चाचे मामे पिता माता से नहीं मानता हर चीज में, तो मैं पूरे 130 करोड़ लोगों से कैसे मानूंगा? आइडिया ये है भाई, रास्ता निकालो एक दूसरे के साथ रहने का और सिविलिटी के साथ रहने का। सो कुणाल, once again, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast, man.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Kushal. Very nice talking to you.
All right, guys. So if you like what I'm doing, please subscribe, press the bell icon. A few of you have been complaining to me that you don't get the notification bell. I can't help it, man. I guess YouTube doesn't like me. And as you know, I'm already on Patreon. So, you know where to go. It's www.patreon.com/Cārvāka. You can support me over there. And you know what? If you want me to talk to people, you have particular guests in mind, shoot an email to me. You know how to get in touch with me, you know everything. And if you want to get in touch with Kunal, I've left his Twitter handle in the description of the podcast. I have left the articles that I've shared today. Read them, go through the database. If you have any questions on the database, you can contact Kunal on Twitter. I am very sure Kunal will be more than happy to answer all of you. But remember, whenever you contact him, be civil. Otherwise, what's the point of living together? And Kiki, thanks for the super chat, man. It's just at the last moment. But you know what? On that note, I'm going to say namaste, goodbye, good night. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Thank you.